You ready?
Uh-huh.
All right.
Are you ready, kids?
What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Unracked podcast. We're helping gym rats of all levels to enhance their fitness and other aspects of their lives through conversation and firsthand experiences. We're your hosts. I'm Mike Gersh.
And I'm Josh Angel.
In our last episode, we went over the importance and the application of mind-muscle connection. And in today's episode, we're going to highlight the importance of training to and sometimes past failure, as well as some of the potential risks that come with it. I think the first idea, Josh, that I want to get like a kind of common misconception out of the way. When we talk about training to and past failure, what does that mean to you?
It means to me training to the point where you can't do a full proper rep. So say you're doing a curl and instead of going all the way to the top, you only go like maybe a quarter of the way. That's for sure doesn't count. And that's like past failure.
Yep, definitely. I feel like a lot of people, probably more when they first start lifting, and then some people never break out of this habit, but they'll have a rep range, say like 8 to 12 in mind, and they choose a rep or a weight that they do 12 reps. A lot of people will stop at that 12 reps. They won't work those extra few reps to really get that extra like blood flowing, muscle activation. This is what Arnold Schwarzenegger calls the pump, right? He actually has a quote saying he doesn't start counting the reps until they start hurting. Now, that's not necessarily what a good coach would say when they're programming, but he does have some truth to what he's saying there, because if you think about it, a lot of people stop before the reps start hurting because that's when it gets uncomfortable. But that's one of the biggest lessons is the gym, is to be able to push yourself past that point of being uncomfortable. So I think, and I've actually seen this with a lot of my clients. It's something I've actually seen firsthand myself, is just getting over the mental hump of training to and past failure. Did you have trouble with that, Josh, or was that something that you're just a sicko and you just love the pain?
Yeah, man. I heard that quote when I first started lifting, so I never counted my reps till I hit till I got sore. And then I was like, all right, I got 12 more to go. You know?
Oh,
No,
you
but
heard the Arnold
definitely,
quote?
yeah, when I first started lifting, and then I was like, all right, man, I'm gonna start after I started feeling the pain, I'm gonna do 12 more, So, but on the real though, I would say it's definitely a beginner mistake. Doing what you were saying earlier about people just have like a rep range of like 8 to 12, and they'll stop at 8, even though they're not really feeling too fatigued or that that soreness yet or the pump. So that's definitely a common mistake. But then I think everybody eventually will start real. I think most people start realizing after a while, it's like, that they're not really feeling the pump, so they might have to, they'll start doing more reps. Hopefully, people will start notice doing that. I think for me, I would say I never had that issue because when I started lifting in high school, people always egg you up to do more. Like your friends, they're like, "Oh no, you
The
got like
crusher.
5 more." Yeah, you got 5 more. So like, I've always kind of gone past the rep that they would give us on the schedules. If I didn't go past it, then we will for sure go up in weight. Either or.
Yeah, exactly. So it's especially like, oh, do 5 more, or you're a pussy. Like, come on.
Yeah, yeah. And then
Um,
like you're also trying to keep up with your other group, so you're always trying to do more too, or like trying to match your weight also.
for sure. And I feel like that's actually when a lot of ego lifting probably comes in, and that's something we've talked about quite a bit on the podcast. So I feel like if you just take the opposite mindset of ego lifting, is not training hard enough. And that's typically the people that are not getting to failure, let alone past failure. This is something I've had quite a few clients. So as I tell the story, I'm going to work kind of a tip that I have when it comes to failure. Um, I have a client who she had never really barbell squatted, like back squatted. And it was something that really, to get better, you have to do it more. You have to do more reps of it. So you're working all of the muscles that stabilize the actual workout itself of the squat. So this is something that if you want to get better at it, you probably have to get pretty close to failure to get the stimulus that you're looking for, to be able to continuously progress and be able to handle more weight stably. When I programmed for her, I had put in like, okay, I use RIR, which is reps in reserve, for newer clients, just because it's easy to understand. So I had her programmed at 1 to 2 RIR, which means she was like pretty damn close to failure. Like if she did another rep, it might have been her last rep, right? I realized after working with this client, it probably would have been better for me to program that close to or getting to failure on a machine like a hack squat or a leg press, for example, because that's something that's much easier to spot, right? So my two big tips when it comes to working to and past failure, you're probably better off on a machine. Granted, bench press, pretty easy to spot. Squat, if you have enough people around, it's pretty easy to spot, unless like depending on how much weight you're doing. If you ask someone to spot your deadlift, like just stop it. But
Why?
again,
You spot me with my
always,
deadlift.
yeah, I'll spot your deadlift. I'll hold your chest and pull you back
I mean,
from
I
behind.
spotted your deadlift too from behind.
I don't remember that.
There's plenty of videos on Instagram on that one, dude. On
Um,
your page, my page.
oh
It's out there.
yeah, I think we collabed on that post for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure, bro.
But landing the plane, the point of what I'm saying is if you're going to work to and past failure, it's typically a better idea to do it on a machine where if you fail, like you can either easily just like get out of the machine, or like think of like a leg extension, right? If you fail, it's just going to go back down. Like there's no real risk of injury on like the negative range of motion. And if you're trying to go past failure, have a spotter, because your spotter will help you guide those last few reps as if you were doing them, but they're essentially taking some of the weight off for you so you can grind through those last couple reps.
Mm-hmm. I actually want to bring back the point about you saying how you notice on your clients, like if they're going hard enough or like reps in reserve. How I kind of track it is like, so let's say for example, I give them maybe like 4 sets of like dumbbell bench press, and then they have, let's say I have like 12 reps, and for like let's say all 4, or I usually do like 10 to 12 reps, get them, or like 8 to 12, give them a range. But then if I see someone that has like, okay, they're doing 12 reps and 40-pound dumbbells, and they keep doing the same thing for like the 4 sets, that obviously shows that they're just kind of going with the motion. They're not trying to go up in weight, or if they do go up in weight, then they should have less reps instead of having like the same amount of reps, and that definitely shows they're not really training to failure. And that's
Definitely.
like
So
a way
that's
that
actually, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say that's kind of a way that you could track yourself too. Like, oh, if I'm not going up in weight, I mean, you should know from feeling the burn too. But like, you should be tracking your workouts.
For sure, but there's a lot of people that train very comfortably, we'll call it, right? They're not using a weight that's intense enough for a very limited amount of reps to where they're not truly getting that intensity that they need to actually build muscle. The movement in itself may burn enough calories to like somewhat burn some fat. It's not going to be anything significant, but it is going to be something that like you'll probably see newbie gains, but it'll wear off and you'll probably plateau pretty quickly. So that's where Josh makes the point. A lot of people will eventually realize that they're not training hard enough and do something about it. But devil's advocate to that, there are plenty of people out there who have probably been training the same lackadaisical way for years and years straight. It happens for sure.
You know what? I'll never get this out of my memory because way back when I was training at like this is probably like when I was maybe 2 years after high school or something. I was training down at an LA Fitness in North Hollywood, and I will never forget this. This guy was talking. I overheard this conversation. This guy was like telling this other dude like, "Yo, I actually like training light. I don't like to go up in weight." And that's but then that person was always lean. It never really had like muscle. It's like one of those like lean builds. And I mean that kind of made sense to me. Like, okay, that's why you're looking like you're not gaining muscle
Skinny
like that.
bitch.
More yeah, pretty much. Like you're gonna stay lean. I mean, yeah, you're gonna grow some muscle, but if you're just doing lightweight and just going for not really going for that burn, you're not gonna really see true muscle growth.
Yep, exactly. So I would say that is probably the top benefit when it comes to why you should train to and past failure. Like I mentioned, at some point you're going to run out of the newbie gains and you're going to plateau. So hopefully you're on a good enough program that pushes you to progressively overload. Because to Josh's point, if you're not continuously increasing weight, then your muscles are going to get used to the stimulus. Say you do leg extension 100 pounds, 3 sets of 10, 4 weeks in a row. It's going to be much easier the 4th week in a row compared to the 1st week. But if you do it 8 weeks in a row, it's diminishing returns. So it's going to like flatten out at a certain point where the gains you made from week 1 to week 4 may have been significant, but they significantly drop weeks 5 through 8 unless you up the intensity.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely after 4 weeks, you really should be going up. Even before that, even, like little by little. Even 2.5 difference makes, it makes a difference.
Yep. I always say maturing in the gym is realizing that the 2.5 pound weights are probably the most important weight when it comes to progressive overload.
And the clips too. Clips make a big difference.
The clips, bro.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That was like when I first started powerlifting, I would text Andrew and I would be like, I just squatted this much or whatever. And he would always respond and be like, oh, you got to add a pound for the clips. And like, I would always joke around like, oh, and like the nitrogen in the air and Mercury's in retrograde. So I actually got to add like 2.3 pounds to it. So
yeah, especially
a little.
in Zoom, you could definitely feel the air, definitely humid in there for sure. So you definitely should add another like 2.5 kg at least.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So one other tip that I have when it comes to working to and past failure, and this is something, honestly, you can do this with or without a spotter. It doesn't really matter which way you do it, but partial reps are going to be huge. So this is something, again, pick your exercise with intention when you plan on doing partial reps. I would say two of the biggest ones that I benefited from going to and past failure with partial reps, number 1 would be lateral raise, and number 2 would be leg extension. So these are exercises.
I just wanted to add, I think the only one that you shouldn't do partial reps is probably just like a barbell squat. I don't know why I was thinking about that. I feel like that was like the only way you should actually hit parallel, hit your depth.
I don't know about only one. I mean, squat, anything with a barbell, really, you shouldn't really do partial reps. I would say partial reps make more sense, mainly for machines, and then secondarily, or machines and cables, and then secondarily some dumbbell movement. Like, I wouldn't say like dumbbell flat bench partial reps or like dumbbell overhead partial reps. Those are two things that I would have someone spotting me to help me get reps past failure, as opposed to partial reps, where if you're doing lateral raises, there's no, like, there is an impact of like the negative part of the rep, but it's not like the weight is going to like fall onto your chest and hurt you, right? Like once you can't do any more, you just drop the weight on the ground and you're
Wait,
good.
did you say not not do partial reps on the cables?
No, do
Did you
partial
say that?
reps on
Oh,
cables.
do cable. Okay, do partial reps. Okay, I was
Machines
like,
and cables are easier for partial reps. Dumbbells, pick your exercises intentionally when you're thinking about partial reps. And then most to all barbell. I'm sure there's like one exception out there that if I say all barbell exercises, right? But most to all barbell exercises, you probably aren't going to be doing partial reps unless you like fail your bench halfway up and someone helps you, but they're not going to be like, okay, now do one more, you know?
no, I would definitely agree on that because even doing partial, like, even if I have a spotter and doing a partial rep on anything with a barbell, like I don't really see myself getting the pump that well, you know? Like I have to go all the way down, like do the full motion, you know, to really get that pump going with a barbell of any type. But yeah, I
Well,
definitely agree with you. Yeah.
that's what I always found crazy about Tom Platz, bro, is his like big thing was training to failure, and he had thunderous legs. Oh, Maron. Like he was known in the bodybuilding community for like how big and shredded his legs were, and he had a very different approach to training than most people, where I could never tell if he was serious or joking when he said this, but he would work out with a lot of people like throughout his prep, and I'm sure he coached a bunch of people, and they would warm up, they would do warm-up sets, they would have their last couple warm-ups, and they would think their top set is coming, where they do some like heavy weight for like 15 reps, and by the end of the 15th rep they're like they went
Oh man.
they
Technical
went
difficulties.
past failure. They went past failure on a barbell squat. They're literally like fetal position on the ground because they're like in so much pain from training past failure on like such a draining exercise. And he goes, "Okay, that was the first set." And you're just like, this dude is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Like, goddamn.
You know, speak to like bring this back to the partial reps, bringing, you know, including him, like if you see his like pretty much anything that wasn't a barbell squat, he actually did like a lot of partial reps, like the leg extensions, the hamstring curls, not really the hack squats kind of, but like pretty much he did a lot of partial stuff too. And like you could see him and the other people that he will work out with, they'll be dying with those things, like the partial reps. And like and then he'll do the same thing. All right, that's the first set, bro. And they're dying.
And they just look at him like, what?
They're screaming and shit. They're like, all right, first set's done. Got 3 more to go.
For sure.
Yeah.
But that's something I think goes into the next topic that I want to cover about training to and past failure is the mental aspect of it. For some people, it's hard to get over like the mental hump of like making themselves intentionally uncomfortable for that period of time. I know back to that story of the girl who was barbell back squatting. She would send me a video of her doing the squats, and it would be like as close to failure as it could. And she would send me the video, and I would always give her the same feedback. I'm like, you need to get closer to failure, get out of your own head. You can do more than you think you can do. And I don't remember what the exact reason was, but we had a couple conversations about it. And there was one day where I kind of laid it out for her. I was like, you're going to watch the video and you're going to say, you're going to be disappointed that you know you had more in the tank. It's always going to feel heavier when the weight is
More in the
actually on
tank.
your back.
I said got more in the tank.
More in the tank.
Sorry.
But that's what I'm saying is the weight feels heavier when it's on your back than when you're watching the video. In the video, you see you had more in the tank. Thank you again.
More in the tank.
And so it's the kind of thing where you just mentally, however you need to do it, get over that hump of I'm a little uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to fail my next rep. You probably have 2 or 3 more, depending on how much you grind your reps out and how much you want to leave in the tank for your following sets. But it's the kind of thing where most of it is honestly mental, because when you watch the video back, you're going to be like, damn, I could have done 2 more reps for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you're just like, got more in the tank.
Well, I mean, that was the kind of thing for me. I feel like you and I, Josh, I feel like are similar but different in a lot of ways. Like, I'll be honest, like I got into the gym initially because I thought it would get me girls. And so I was doing like all of the, I guess, like frat bro exercises, because like I didn't really start working out until I was in college. I went to the gym with like a bunch of guys that I know from college, and like looking back on it, I don't know how much everybody actually knew. One guy I know is actually like a very successful personal trainer now, so shout out Wayne. But it is the kind of thing. So like similar to what you said, Josh, it's like you're in that setting, you're surrounded by people, like especially when you're surrounded by people who are training in that same way, where think about if you're trying to train super intense and you go to Planet Fitness where there's like a hunk alarm, and you think about like the people that are surrounded you. Granted, like there's some big people that go to Planet Fitness. I think Sam Sulek goes to Planet Fitness every once in a while, which like if you're a normal Planet Fitness goer and you see Sam Sulek, what are you doing? But
I mean, you see him covered up most of the time, anyways. You won't see him naked until the locker room.
yeah, but you can still tell he's a monstrosity of a man under his pump cover.
But you won't be too scared, you know? Like you'd be kind of scared, but you won't be too scared, you know? Like imagine, like it's a big difference, you know, when you see them with a pump cover and then you see them with a tank and then like the shorts. Like he wears some baggy ass joggers, and then when he takes them off, like shit, dude.
Yeah, I mean he takes them off and he just has his hog hanging out.
Yeah, I mean that's like scary too.
Josh, you're more intimidated by that. I know that.
I was gonna bring something back to this. Oh yeah. Are you finished? Because I remember what I wanted to say.
Well, I was gonna ask if you had any tips for like getting over the mental aspect of it, but go for what you were gonna say.
Well, I was gonna bring up like how you said like, oh, your group of friends didn't really know what you're, might have not been doing stuff properly, but a lot of stuff has changed. Like if even if you were doing proper stuff like 10 years ago, like 10 years in the future now, it's a lot of stuff is different now. A lot of things change over time. I mean, things are still changing over time too. There's a lot of new research coming out, like things that you think that were like optimal back in the day, it's not really optimal anymore nowadays. So I mean, no matter what, everybody was doing something wrong before.
Exactly. And that's something too that it is all very individualized at this point. There's a lot of different disciplines that you can be training for that probably require different levels of workout intensity. Like, for example, if you're bodybuilding, you want to absolutely destroy your muscle fibers. So you're going to work failure into your programming very, very consistently. As a power lifter, it's a bad thing if I fail a rep. So, like, I don't want to fail a rep. Like I want smooth and controlled movements. So I'm never really going to choose a weight unless I'm at a meet and it's my third attempt and it's like borderline. I'm never going to like really fail a rep in the gym, even if I have an RPE 8. So like different disciplines require different levels of failure. So never write the story for someone else. Like if you see someone never training to failure and it looks, maybe it's a power lifter and they're just trying to keep the intensity. If you see someone and you're like, damn, this guy's going to overtrain, then it may be a bodybuilder and he's probably a professional and is probably taking enough juice to recover all of the muscle fibers in a very expedited way to be
probably
able
take
to
enough
train.
Juice, dude.
That's what I said. And
Yeah, hopefully he's taking enough though.
Oh yeah. Can you
Hopefully he's
imagine
training hard and
taking?
lasting too.
Can you imagine taking steroids and still looking like shit?
Isn't that you right now?
Bro, I am as natty as it possibly gets.
You're on creatine. That's not natty.
Yeah, according to Mark.
And you're on the pre-workout, so it's not natty either, bro.
Damn, and there's creatine in my pre-workout, so is that like double not
whammy?
natty? So then
whammy.
it cancels out.
Yeah, you're pretty much on the cycle right now, dude. Honestly.
No, it cancels out. It cancels out. I am natty.
So I think if I have any other tips, I think people need to kind of build up to, like, for sure you're not gonna just walk in the gym and like ripped out past failure, dropping the weight down on the floor, I think after a while you eventually get to it. Maybe by like a year or 6 months to a year, you'll start feeling it, because you also kind of have to test out your body to see how far you can even push yourself in the first place, while staying safe. So maybe like the first year you'll be learning how to do stuff properly without hurting yourself. That's like super important. And then, definitely have a spotter while you're training to failure, and eventually you'll be able to do it by yourself.
Yep. So I think that's a big part of it. Is I'm not by any means saying like that person that isn't working out intensely enough should just all of a sudden double all of the weight for like every exercise they're doing. That's not what I'm saying at all. To Josh's point, to my point of progressive overload, it's all progressive. So the issue is when you lateral raise the same weight for the same reps, for the same sets every single week for the next 8 weeks, that's not training intensely enough. But I'm also not saying, okay, you lateral raise 15 every time. Okay, try lateral raising 40, and then we'll call that training to failure. Because if you go too high, you're probably going to hurt yourself. So what I'm saying and what Josh is saying here is like warm up properly, work out for long enough that you do build a foundation of strength and muscle to where you can handle more weight, but in a still controlled method. And when you get towards the end where it isn't as controlled, that's when you can work in either partial reps or have a spotter.
Yeah. Gotta build up to it. Be hitting the 200s on the bench.
Yep. The only other like technique I think I have, and let me know if you have any others after this one. I know this is something we've talked on the podcast about before, but this is something that will truly help with intensity, especially if you don't have a spotter. I know there's plenty of times where like I work out early in the morning, even if Mark or Josh were there, like whatever exercise I was doing, I was like, I don't want to bother them and like ask them to spot me on this. So I would just go ahead and like do this exercise myself. But if it wasn't something I was able to work like to or past failure, or even if I would work in a drop set. I know we've talked about this. I know I've talked about the drop set on the leg extension is one of my absolute favorite burnouts. But it is something that you get to failure and then you drop the weight and then you just do more. And this is one of the most like significant mental hurdles, where if you're able to do a top set and then I recommend 3 drops proceeding and do all of those to failure, there's literally nothing like mentally that's going to get in your way. Like this is one of the hardest things to convince yourself to make yourself do. But when you do it, it feels fucking amazing.
Mm-hmm. I think the only thing I would have to add, or I guess like a different tip, would be, let's say you're doing like a heavy compound movement but like Mike was saying, like one day you don't have a spotter, or people, maybe no one's around you, or whatever reason you don't feel like asking for help. I mean, yeah, you might not be able to train fairly on your compound movement, but then let's say your next exercise, let's say you're doing squats, you don't want to train the failure, but you're worried about hurting, so you get to like that kind of point where it's like somewhat of a burn, but like where to play it safe, and then your next workouts, those are the ones that are more safe, and then you can actually train to failure, like the leg press. That one you can just that one you could kind of hurt yourself, but it's more safe than a squat for sure. And then you can go to like the leg extension, and then that's you could train both of those to failure safely enough.
For sure. And again, that just goes back to like being intentional with the intensity in regards to whatever workout you're going to do. Like leg press, to your point, I'm not going to program someone to do leg press to failure. If you were ever going to do leg press to failure, you 1,000% should have a squatter, because that is like a very high risk of injury if it's weight that's too heavy for you to handle. Because yeah, it has a stopper, but like the average human being, no matter where you have the stopper, is going to get crumbled underneath that weight. So that's the kind of thing I would never program leg press for my client and be like, okay, do this to failure and then do 3 partials and then have someone spot you for 2 more reps past fit. No, that's just asking for trouble. Like that's just one of those things, no pun intended, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Uh-huh. Well, I think it's just one of those things where, like, for me, for example, I know I can do, push through it or like get close to it where I'm not gonna, kill myself. And you can always just drop the weight too. Like, it's one of those things that where you can just, let's say you do 3 plates, your max is like 10 reps. Okay, next set you can just drop down to 2 plates, rep out 12, do the next one with 1 plate and do like 15 reps if you really wanted to. And then, I don't see anybody. I mean, it could be possible. Honestly, anything's possible at the gym, but like at least to minimize risk, like if you have 1 plate on there, like it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna kill you. Hopefully.
Exactly. And to that point, I know one thing that we've talked about a lot is like variability. So we understand that every person is going to be slightly different in what works well for them, what gives them like intense stimulus, and what gives them like actual muscle building activity, right? Because everyone genetically is made up differently. So this is something as well that I always preach. If you have a workout, like take leg extension, for example, leg extension is something that you can really put into any of these buckets, right? You can do it to failure by yourself. You can do it to failure with partial reps. You can do it past failure with a spotter. You can do a drop set, so on and so forth, right? Just because you have 4 weeks in a program where you're programmed one style of training, like say you have drop set programmed, in the next 4 weeks, switch it up. Start doing partial reps and then switch it up in the next 4 weeks and start having someone spot you so it doesn't get stale. So you don't plateau on that exercise. You can continuously progress and continuously do more weight, or what most people's main goal is to continuously stimulate and build your muscles.
Yeah. So some
Josh,
good points right there.
Are there any downsides to training to and past failure?
Honestly, man, you're gonna be shredded. That's part of the biggest downside. You're gonna get too much attention from the opposite sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to
That's
be
probably
beating
the
guys
down.
off with both hands?
I said opposite sex of whatever your sex is, dude. So, I mean, you're a chick, that might.
I don't want to assume what you identify as, so.
I just said the opposite sex, dude. It could be whatever they identify as.
All right.
Yeah, okay, but anyways, Yeah, that's a big one. You might get too much clout on Instagram for being
Yep, too many
too
DMs.
shredded. So I mean, I think that's like the biggest downside, if anything. But no, actually, there's a few other points. Another downside to that is, maybe cause of injury. If you're not doing this stuff properly, you could definitely hurt yourself, especially if you don't have a spotter. You're doing this dump, barbell press, and you don't have a spotter. You go to failure, and then that thing just stuck in your chest. Like, yeah, not gonna be pretty.
For anyone that's listening to the podcast and not watching the YouTube, I'm smiling from ear to ear because Josh finally said the point that I teed him up to make. Normally he just trolls me and intentionally says the opposite of what he knows I'm thinking.
But then I just show you right now in the beginning, I did both.
Well, you said the thing I wanted you to say, so that's all that matters.
All right.
Yes, so there is a much, much higher risk of injury and potential of overtraining. So this is something, the 2 points I would make here. Number one, when it comes to risk of injury, a lot of these exercises, you should use a spotter. I'll go back to the story of that time I was on the decline press and I failed the rep. And thank God Josh was like about 10 feet away and I was able to make eye contact because I did it with no spotter. And nobody else gave a damn at all. They would have just let me die right there.
Imagine you did that at a zoo. I mean, someone would save you if they saw you, but like, there's not that many people in there to even look at you.
No, if we were at zoo, bro, someone would set up a tripod and film themselves saving me.
Before, wait, I gotta set my tripod. This is good content right here. Stay there. I got you.
Yeah, so number one, have a spotter. Number two, when it comes to the thought of overtraining, Tom Platz is a psychopath, right? So you are most likely, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to operate under the assumption that you're not on a shit ton of steroids as a professional bodybuilder. So you don't need to train like Tom Platz does. I can tell you that right off the bat. But it is something that you want to take training to or past failure with a grain of salt. You don't want to do it every single set that you do on every single exercise on every single day of the week, because that's when you're going to set yourself up for potential injury and most likely to be in that range of overtraining where, again, similar to the idea of diminishing gains, you really only need to work failure. I would say, depending on how advanced you are, again, so everybody's going to be different, but depending on how advanced you are, I would say a beginner probably only needs like 1 or 2 sets to failure, maybe per week, like depending on how many days you're working out. And then as you get more advanced, it's probably like 1 or 2 sets to failure per day. And then as you get more advanced, it's like, okay, I have 2 exercises that I'm taking to failure, so on and so forth. So again, even with the idea of how to incorporate failure, it is still very tied into the idea of progressive overload as well.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like rocket science in a way.
Yep.
No,
pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I don't have anything else to add about failure. The cons to this.
Okay. Do you have anything else to add in general? Because I have a quote.
No, go ahead, man. Say your quote.
All right. I'll wrap us up with this quote here.
Should I close my eyes?
I mean, if you really want to.
Should we tell the viewers to close their eyes too?
Get it? Yeah. Right. Everyone close your eyes because I'm about to give you a psychopath Tom Platz quote. So he's obviously in the gym when he says this. So that's what he means when he says here. But the quote goes, the same thing as in life is the same thing in here. If you can do this, you can do anything. You have to achieve failure. You have to take it that far. Nobody wants to go that far. It's too scary. But you know something? I got news for you. That's where winning is. It always has been. Congratulations. You achieved failure.
Amen. Amen. Preach.
So Josh, I got one question for you before we close out.
Okay, go ahead.
If you try to fail and you do, did you fail or succeed?
You succeed. You succeed because you went in the gym.
But you failed.
You succeed. At the end of the day, you succeed. In my eyes, you succeed. In my heart, you succeed.
Congratulations. You've achieved failure.
Congratulations. Oh, man. Don't touch the camera, dude.
No, I had to make sure it was going to stay. All right.
All right.
Any last thoughts, brother?
Nah, brother. That was a good one, dude. Brother.
For sure. Well, thanks as always for tuning in. We're going to be dropping new episodes every other Thursday, as you know, in the morning on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. As always, make sure to like, comment, follow, subscribe. However you're watching or listening, we appreciate your support. I'm Mike.
And I'm Josh. And Merry fucking Christmas, dude.
Make sure to keep making those sweet gains. Keep living life unracked. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year's. Let's go.
Baby.